It turns out you can fit a lot of Pokemon into a day.
You really can. There's so much good play. The round we just had, the first half of round 7, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, they were
We're on
fantastic.
7.5 right now.
Yes, we had some fantastic matches. I was over on the mainstream with Gabby, and we saw another Japanese representative make it through. We've got some more matches. Going to start it off a little more local here. See if we can get another US representative in. We're guaranteed it. But
Guaranteed at least one.
It's which one it's going to be is the deciding factor.
Absolutely. It should be a very interesting match between both of these players. We have Dane Zieman and Justin Carris. Both of these players have been sort of threatening to crack into the top throughout the tournament. They've been sort of, we're at 4-2, so they've both dropped 2 matches, but been on the top end of that, waiting to burst through and get that 5th win to make it into the second day of the World Championships here. And now one of them will be guaranteed too.
Well, Justin had that fantastic Worlds run last year, of course. Probably looking to channel some of that energy that he brought through from that one.
Yeah.
I spoke to him actually earlier at 2-2, and he wasn't feeling too peachy about it. He looked a little bit stressed out about it.
Kind of like that.
Something like that, yeah. I did say to him, you know, you've just got to win 3. That's the best advice you can give is, how many wins have you got? 2? All right,
3.
Five minutes. Win 3. It's that simple. So overall, you know, I think he's really hungry for another one of those Worlds performances. He was talking a little bit about his team. This is actually a team, he played a community-run tournament last week in his local area up in New Jersey, and he actually won it. So he felt very, very good, I think, winning that set. Doesn't look so peachy about his team now.
So what you're saying is this is already a championship team.
It's won a tournament, we'll put it that way, but this is a completely different tournament. This is not your local tournament. This is one he's dying to win. You can see he wants to win. But going up against Dane, that is such a tough opponent. He knows his stuff. He's had some really good finishes all season and just kept himself in the running, making sure people know he's there to play.
All right, well, we are into team preview here between Justin Carris and Dane Zieman. Justin on the left-hand side of your screen and Dane on the right. One thing that jumps out to me, we've been seeing only a couple of Ultra Beasts so far at these top tables, the Celesteela and Kartana. Justin opts for the Xurkitree.
Something a little bit different. The Xurkitree on that side, though, is going to have a really tough time if it wants to hit the Gyarados and Celesteela, those premium targets for it, with the Alolan Marowak on the field. That was something that was talked about coming in to this tournament, that a lot of people were picking it back up from the early days of this format, and to see it really make a name for itself again at the World Championships may really force Justin to reconsider his options. When it comes to defeating that Alolan Marowak, though, I think he's got a pretty good answer in the bottom left of his team there.
Yeah, that Gigalith is scary if you are planning on using that Alolan Marowak to protect your Pokemon. Going to be interesting here. We haven't seen too much Porygon 2 at these top tables, but Justin clearly showing a Trick Room mode. Have to wonder if Dane's going to have to think about bringing his own Hariyama to counter it. Perfect counter against both Porygon 2 and Gigalith.
Yeah, they come as a pair, really, setting up the Trick Room with Porygon 2, Gigalith. Hariyama's going to be able to do a number on those, but it can only hit one at once. It's not lucky enough to have a spread fighting move, which does a lot of damage, which would be fantastic.
Maybe an Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon.
If it gets the Komodo treatment, then it's going to be, sign me up for that. But both these teams very interesting. Like to touch on the Gyarados-Marowak combination from Dane. You know, we talked about Marowak. That was the early days of the season. Bring your Gyarados, bring your Marowak. Keep your Gyarados safe with your Marowak. Keep it safe from, I don't know, Thunderbolts from Xurkitree.
Well, we're going to have to see if that Marowak's going to be able to protect the Gyarados on Dane's side as we head into turn 1 here of our first match of one of our final Swiss Round 7 matches. Again, the winner of this best-of-3 set will be advancing to day 2. The loser will be going home early. Tapu Koko and Celesteela, 2 of the most common Pokemon we've seen out for Dane, and Porygon 2 and Salamence for Justin.
Well, there's a play on the field here for Justin that I really think could be very, very smart if he has it. Bring the Salamence, a slightly faster Pokemon, and we were talking about it before as well. Porygon 2 needs to set up Trick Room without Hariyama in play. I don't see a Hariyama on the field right now, Evan, do you?
Nope.
Definitely not. So if you want to set up Trick Room, now could be a great time to do it, you do have to be a little bit worried about the Celesteela, and we're going to see a Chansey come in nice and early. That's a Pokemon that really does not care about a potential Trick Room.
Yeah, we've been having some pretty aggressive matches, but I think it's getting a little late. Time to slow it down a little bit.
Chansey's going to keep it nice and low-key.
Nice and chill, really hitting that beach theme.
Yeah, keeping it really there. One of those Pokemon that heals up and causes a real nuisance for itself. We do now see all of Dane's team in turn 1, though.
Yep, it's going to be the Marowak in the back, tanking this Flamethrower from Salamence quite handily. Not very effective at all. Porygon 2 going for the Shadow Ball, though. Justin making a bold play there, catching Marowak on the switch in with Shadow Ball. That's a very interesting choice on Porygon 2, not one that we see very often.
I like it, though, and with the Marowak in play, something that I think players had to prepare for, especially a player running Xurkitree. Shadow Ball on your Porygon is a fantastic answer there.
Really good adaptation with all the Mimikyu that we've been seeing as well.
I think it's a double usage. It's very smart play. And Marowak is in a position where it can't stick around. Of course, Chansey can start to be annoying. Salamence could go and do some damage. Dragon Pulse is certainly one of the ways to do it.
Yep, Dragon Pulse definitely going to be able to do a lot of damage to that Marowak. Pick up the KO there. So Dane is going to have to rely on Chansey, who tried to heal Pulse, but there's nothing there. Porygon 2 not able to pick up any damage with that Shadow Ball, of course. Back in the day, we all know normal types take no damage from ghost type attacks.
That's an old school fact. There's no new learning.
Classic trainer tip right there.
That's on a sign somewhere right in the original games. But it's so interesting to see that come out from Justin, because what he's done there is basically admitted to Dane the one thing he's scared of is Marowak. He's taken out Marowak, and now I think he's just waiting for a premium opportunity to get his Xurkitree into play, especially if he can get it in while Electric Terrain still exists on the field.
Yeah, well, Tapu Koko, which set that Electric Terrain, is going to deal a good amount of damage back with that Life Orb boosted Thunderbolt onto Salamence. Takes a lot back with that Flamethrower as well, but Chansey takes this opportunity to poison the Porygon 2, which is going to go for an Ice Beam here. Much more reasonable Porygon 2 play. Will pick up the KO there. Justin's Pokemon doing a surprising amount of damage there, but Dane does get the poison, the toxic poison onto Porygon 2. Maybe a little bit late, though. Not going to be able to build up those ticks.
Yeah, the big thing I'm sort of concerned about from Dane's team selection here is his damaging Pokemon in the Marowak and the Tapu Koko have already been removed. Now, if there is a Xurkitree in the back, the two Pokemon that resist or have Lightning Rod to keep themselves safe are gone. So if he can just bring it in, maybe let Salamence get knocked out, he's still in a good position. I think that the Xurkitree is going to be absolutely essential, and no increasing tick damage from Toxic this time.
All right, well, Xurkitree is the switch in here. If it gets in for free, does not get seeded or Toxic, may be able to start dishing out some damage there. The Flamethrower from onto the Celesteela deals a little bit. Xurkitree on the switch in will be Leech Seeded, though. So Xurkitree will be taking some damage from that Leech Seed over time. Seismic Toss from Chansey, able to pick up the KO onto Salamence here. So now Xurkitree is exerting a lot of pressure onto the Celesteela and a little bit onto the Chansey, but that Leech Seed will slowly whittle it down, and the Chansey Blissey line is very well known for being able to tank those special hits very well.
Yes, I think Justin may be letting his Salamence get taken out there, so he has the option to bring in a potential physical attacker. Something like Gigalith, which is going to do...
choice.
Yes, it's going to really help. It, of course, can also put a decent amount of pressure with those neutral rock-type hits on the Celesteela. Has to watch out for something like a Heavy Slam, even though it's not too effective because the weights are very similar. They're both big boy Pokemon. It's going to do not so much, but it's going to start wearing it down, and also bringing that sand, the Sandstorm through Sandstream, helps out against the Chansey, forces a little more damage down on it. Xurkitree not being slowed down at all, though.
Yeah, Xurkitree very fast, picks up the KO easily in that Electric Terrain with Thunderbolt, activates the Beast Boost, which will, of course, make it even scarier with that special attack boost. Chansey trying to get more damage off onto the Xurkitree, goes for the Toxic as well, but Chansey is going to have to survive both the Xurkitree that's been boosted and now this Gigalith that's also boosting itself.
Yes, this Xurkitree is going to be putting a lot of pressure down, and I love the way that Justin's played this game. He's actually ignored the Chansey, and Dane hasn't got too much out of it. He's only just now getting things set up with it, and it really is, I think, too little too late. Chansey's about to get worn down. Yes, Xurkitree is also going to be getting worn down, but he only needs one turn to get a really big hit in. He isn't going to be able to capitalize off Electric Terrain anymore. But Chansey, facing down all of these Pokemon from Justin, is certainly going to struggle. And with this very, very slow play option from Dane, he never was in a position to execute it properly.
Yeah, not in the best position if you let all of your damage go pretty quickly in the game. Both the Chansey and the Celesteela a little too slow if you bring both of them together. Chansey actually taking that boosted Thunderbolt quite well. No terrain limiting the damage output from Xurkitree. Gigalith will be taking the Toxic Poison here, but will actually go ahead and use the Continental Crush with that Curse Boost to try and knock this Chansey down.
Yeah, knowing that Chansey isn't so good on the physical defense side of things, using a physical Z move, probably based off Stone Edge, so it does a lot of damage. The Curse is going to help it out as well. It's going to be doing really big amounts. The Thunderbolt there, just a nice little bit of information, I think, for Justin to take into Game 2. But the Continental Crush is enough to round out Game 1 for Justin.
Absolutely. Justin taking that Game 1 in a pretty resounding fashion there. Really well played from Justin. Dane bringing both of his sort of stally wall Pokemon left him without enough offense to fight back. But you have to wonder if, he played a little bit more conservatively, had his walls out earlier, didn't miss any opportunities to get those Toxics in earlier, set up a little bit alongside of the offensive pressure so that Justin couldn't ignore the Chansey or ignore the Celesteela. Maybe Dane has a way to get back in there.
I really think Dane has to keep that Marowak around. And the weird thing was, of course, we saw Xurkitree come in against the Celesteela. Marowak was long gone.
Yep.
That's a pairing that's so essential, I think, to Dane's team. Porygon didn't even set up Trick Room. Porygon actually did a surprising amount of damage. Showing that Shadow Ball off is really good information for Dane. But Justin has to ask himself, he can probably use it safely. There's not too many answers. As we cut over to the team preview screen, Dane's made his mind up.
Yep, Dane knows exactly what he wants to do, and so does Justin as we head into Game 2 here. Justin Carris, if he wins this one game, he will be advancing into Day 2. Hope for a repeat of his last year's Worlds performance. Dane needs to win this to force a Game 3 and keep his tournament dreams alive. Going to come down to these leads here. Tapu Koko and Hariyama are the leads for Dane, getting a lot more offensive pressure right off the bat up against the Salamence and Porygon 2 on Justin's side.
I like that change a lot from Dane. Hariyama is going to be a lot more useful here. Putting good pressure down on Porygon, I think. Salamence Intimidate is going to help out a little bit, but Salamence isn't in the best position now. It could also be potentially faked out and attacked by Tapu Koko, while Porygon has to run away scared from something like the Hariyama, and it definitely gives him more options. A very, very smart and much needed switch from Dane.
Absolutely. That's exactly what you want from any turn one. You want options. The player who has the most options usually is the one that can grab the momentum and start snowballing that all the way.
Put yourself in the driving seat.
Yeah, Hariyama with this fake out pressure, able to get the flinch onto Salamence, making sure that Salamence isn't going to deal any damage while Tapu Koko goes for a Thunderbolt right back at it. Deals a good amount of damage with that Life Orb. Salamence flinches from the fake out while Porygon 2 is left shadow balling into the Hariyama. Dealt a lot of damage to that Marowak, but Hariyama is no Marowak.
Yeah, this is a much bulkier Pokemon that's not taking super effective damage. And I do think the fake out and Tapu Koko attack, really smart there from Dane. A lot more damage put down than he got in a lot of turns in Game 1. The Salamence now liable to get knocked out by something like a Dazzling Gleam, and for that reason, it's forced to run away.
Yep, and Gigalith is forced to switch into a Hariyama.
Ooh. It's not
always
a pretty
dangerous.
Time. Yeah, with a fighting type against a normal and a rock type, could get a little bit dicey out there for Justin's side of the field.
All right, another Thunderbolt coming out from Tapu Koko deals so much damage to that Gigalith with that Life Orb and with that terrain. Knockoff onto Porygon 2 will weaken it, knocking off the Eviolite, but of course with that Gigalith switch in, bringing in the Trick Room from Porygon 2.
Yeah, that's something that I think he could have done in Game 1, but now is certainly a better time to do it. All he has to do is safely answer this Hariyama. The Hariyama making a smart play though, to get rid of the Eviolite on Porygon 2. That's one of the most appealing things about Porygon 2, is how bulky it is thanks to that item. And without that in play, Porygon 2, a little more liable to get knocked out. Gigalith took a lot of damage coming in.
Yep.
You have to respect that.
That's another Thunderbolt.
It really is. Of course, the Tapu Koko has the opportunity to Thunderbolt, but it's not too much to ask in my opinion.
All right, well, Hariyama actually going to switch out on Dane's side for Celesteela, not sticking around in the Trick Room, which Hariyama usually loves to do. Tapu Koko going to protect itself as well. Dane trying to waste this Z move from Justin's Gigalith is going to bait it out into either the Celesteela or the protecting Tapu Koko.
Well, I think one is significantly better than the other. If you hit the Celesteela, you've got to be feeling really, really good. As Gigalith heads on up, builds up that rock, it is going to be doing full damage to Celesteela. No protect on there, obviously. And Celesteela on the switch-in, but so low.
Takes a good amount of damage there. Porygon 2 also able to fire back with that Shadow Ball, of course, neutral damage. Gets really close to picking up the KO onto Celesteela, but not quite enough. Still, when one of your premier walls takes that much damage on a switch-in, almost getting knocked out, never a great sign, but maybe Dane deciding that he just needs to pivot right now.
Yes, and I think the Celesteela may have to buy itself some time, get a little more leftovers recovery because it's not caught by the residual damage from the Sandstorm. But you've got to ask yourself, is Gigalith able to knock it out with a Rock Slide? Gigalith and Porygon 2 are both going to be moving before Tapu Koko, so if Gigalith can tidy up Celesteela, then Porygon 2 can maybe tidy up the Tapu Koko or whatever comes in its place.
All right, well, Dane switching in the Hariyama, trying to reset that fake-out pressure while Celesteela protects to get another turn of leftovers recovery here. Gigalith does go for the Rock Slide, not going for a full damage output here. Not going to hit the Celesteela thanks to that protect, and just going to deal a little bit of damage to Hariyama on the switch-in. Shadow Ball from Porygon 2 is going to connect to Hariyama, but as we've already seen, not the most damaging option.
It's a pretty good move, though. He does go for what was the Tapu Koko slot, and he respects the Celesteela. Now that turn is kind of not available to him this time because of that smart switch-in from Dane. He's not able to make that same confident play with Rock Slide and an attack from Porygon 2 because of the threat of Fake Out, and he has to spend a little bit of time buying some time in the Trick Room. That's turns he wants to be attacking. Interesting play that I think Dane has on the table for him, and he really has to see if he goes for it, is a Fake Out onto Porygon 2, because Gigalith is pretty much dead on to be protecting itself right now. I think with the potential Fake Out and Heavy Slam isn't something it wants to deal with. It doesn't go for it, though.
Just going to be the fake out into a non-protecting Gigalith, which will flinch because of that. Shadow Ball from Porygon 2 connects with Celesteela, not enough to pick up the KO though. So Celesteela is going to be able to get this Leech Seed off onto Porygon 2. Going to get the Leech Seed plus leftovers recovery now to boost itself right back up to start trying to be a little bit more of a wall, but not opting for any damage, just trying to make sure that Celesteela can stick around for a few more turns.
Well, getting even more recovery means these protecting turns are even more valuable for Celesteela. And after another set of all of this recovery, maybe that Rock Slide isn't going to be able to knock it out.
No.
By the time he's gone through the protects and things, the Trick Room's going to be out. Porygon 2 is going to have to try and set it back up. And trying to set up the Trick Room from Porygon 2 with a Hariyama on the field is a big ask.
Absolutely.
I think Gigalith has to accept Celesteela's going to be protecting this turn and go in on that Hariyama. Double down and just make sure you knock it out. Porygon 2 isn't in a comfortable position right now and may actually be forced to switch out to make sure Leech Seed isn't in play. Those switches are something Dane can punish, and that's how these bulky stall teams work.
Well, Gigalith, if it decides to go on the offensive here, is going to have to rely probably on that Stone Edge to get the damage output. We've already seen the Curse and the Rock Slide. Most likely not going to have another option here, but as you say, Dane does go for the Protect here on Celesteela, trying to protect itself. Hariyama avoids the Stone Edge. Always a risk when you're running that attack. It has a huge base power, but is much less likely to hit than a Rock Slide. The close combat able to pick up the KO onto Porygon 2. Hariyama dropping its defenses there. And unfortunately, that Stone Miss just making sure that Hariyama is going to do what Dane wanted it to do.
It doesn't get that nickname for no reason.
Yeah.
It is well known for missing. And a crucial turn like that, when Trick Room is about to end, losing your Porygon 2 is not what you wanted here. Celesteela doesn't have its Leech Seed anymore, which is kind of a good thing. And Trick Room ending could be really good for Justin. Seeing the Xurkitree means maybe that turn was kind of, he was either going to win it with a Stone Edge knockout, or he was going to have Trick Room end and Xurkitree come in for free. With Celesteela this low, with Hariyama pretty low as well, Xurkitree could start picking up knockouts and get the Beast Boosts rolling.
Unless there's Marowak in the back.
Yeah, that is a problem. That is something that he needs to be aware of. But
this is game 2, not game 1, so Justin has not been able to take care of that threat, so Xurkitree is still a little bit exposed here.
Yes, and the Hariyama switch out could be what you wanted to see, Evan.
Yep, absolutely the Marowak switch into the Xurkitree, and actually Gigalith switching out as well into the Salamence here. So if Xurkitree went for an electric type attack, not going to be able to deal any damage here. Instead, it looks like the Intimidate just going to drop the Marowak and the Celesteela, and Xurkitree shows off a substitute, going to try and protect itself from any attacks from the Celesteela and Marowak. Dane, of course, unfortunately for Justin, though, decides to seed that Salamence, which will mean that Celesteela is going to continue to heal right back up.
Yes, and I think this is a really interesting play from Justin, purely because he gets a substitute up. And as you mentioned before the turn, he has to worry about Marowak, and on a turn where he could see it switch in, he decides to set up a substitute on Xurkitree. I really enjoy that play from Justin, because it now means his Xurkitree's in a slightly better position. He could try one of his other moves. It's only slightly better, though.
Yeah,
but that's how you've got to get back into the game.
The problem with Xurkitree that has left people not choosing it instead of like a Tapu Koko or some of the other powerful electric-type Pokemon out there is that its move pool is just so shallow.
It is an awful move pool, to be honest with you.
Anything but Thunderbolt.
Yeah, with Gigalith coming back in as well, you have to wonder how Justin's going to get back into this without Trick Room in play. This is looking a little bit difficult, if I'm honest with you, and the way he's forced to switch around so much could be a bit of a conundrum. Yeah,
there's the shallow move pool coming out, that Energy Ball dealing almost no damage to the Celesteela. Does drop a special defense, though, so a few more of those, and Justin might be able to make this work. Heavy Slam will connect with the Gigalith, though, and pick up the KO. A critical hit coming out from that Celesteela, so Justin's going to have to bring that Salamence back out. Celesteela gets the Beast Boost and raises its defense. Not going to be too impactful against the Salamence and Xurkitree, but really going to need a miracle here from Justin. Get a nice flamethrower to knock out that Celesteela from the Salamence. We did have the special defense drop, so maybe
it'll be close. And maybe the choice the Salamence has to make is: does it try and get rid of Marowak so Xurkitree can play its game, or does it try and deal with Celesteela on its own and leave Xurkitree in there? Of course.
And also, can Salamence deal with Marowak?
It's going to be tight. I mean, it is getting some chip damage from the Sandstorm.
Yeah,
it's
still just a couple turns, though.
It's really going to be an uphill struggle. The last two from Justin against all four from Dane, it looks like it's the Marowak coming good in Game 2. A stark difference to what we had in Game 1. And as you mentioned, between games, you need to get those walls, the Celesteela being one of them, in a lot earlier.
And that's just going to be the forfeit coming out from Justin. Wants to go on to Game 3. Doesn't want to play out the rest of it. Decides he has no winning outs there with that Marowak out on the field. So Dane Zieman taking that second game there, protecting his Marowak, not, knowing that the Porygon 2 has that Shadow Ball, knowing all of the different techs that Justin has, created to eliminate that Marowak threat. Playing around all of those, Dane able to take that second game in a really, really strong fashion. You see there, the Marowak on the table, blessing Dane with good luck.
Well, you do have to wonder, what would have happened if that Stone Hedge hit? I don't want to dwell on a single turn and a single move, but I feel that was so decisive. And you have to look at Justin's Gigalith and see if there was anything else in the move pool that was potentially more reliable, or just a slightly better choice in that instance. I don't think there was. Both of its moves are a little bit inaccurate, and that's something he has to think about when he plays, what his outs are to this team. Very interesting that Continental Crush went towards the Celesteela, didn't get the knockout there, and he didn't save it for Chansey either. So something he's been changing up between the games. The Xurkitree just didn't get to play in that game, though, and that's a problem.
Yeah, if Justin is going to be relying on that Xurkitree for all of his damage output against something like a Celesteela, really going to have to make sure that Marowak is never able to switch in, never able to stay in for free. And a lot of times, unfortunately, in that last match, Marowak was just able to sit on the field and make sure that Xurkitree was left using Energy Ball.
Well, that's the thing, and something you brought up fantastically is Xurkitree's move pool is pretty limited. You have, of course, the electric type attacks, which are great, and it does have actually discharge, but it appears Justin hasn't bought that. But you bring Energy Ball, you're beating Gastrodons. That's one thing, and we saw the Japanese players actually a big fan of the Gastrodon. But overall, you're not hitting much else. You're certainly not dealing with a Marowak, and I don't think there's a reliable way in Xurkitree without getting a hidden power ground variant that you're able to do it.
All right, well, some interesting moves here from Dane's side, bringing the Gyarados out for the first time alongside the Tapu Koko, up against Justin and his Porygon 2 and Salamence. So double Intimidates coming out here. Most impactful on Dane's side to get the Intimidate off onto the Gyarados. But a really interesting switch up there. Have not seen the Gyarados in any of the games so far.
No, and I really think what he's trying to do here is bait out that Xurkitree. Force the Xurkitree to come in while Electric Terrain is up, and then catch him with the Marowak again. I don't think Justin's going to go for it at all. We see the Gyarados leaving the field, so maybe looking for a switch in. Really laying out the buffet for Xurkitree right here.
Dane does not believe that Justin is bringing Xurkitree in this Game 3. Thunderbolt coming out from Tapu Koko paralyzes the Salamence. It's its own little Stokes Spark Surfer on Tapu Koko's side. Salamence able to get the Dragon Pulse off, but into the Celesteela, which will handily resist that attack. Going to be up to Porygon 2 to make something happen for Justin. Will get the Trick Room up, so maybe that paralysis was actually a double-edged sword.
This paralysis could actually pay off. If the Salamence is now moving after Celesteela, it's going to be able to Flamethrower it before it does anything any turn. And it may be able to get a little bit of damage down on Tapu Koko as well. Maybe we see the Porygon 2 and Salamence, as we saw in the previous games. Justin doesn't like that Tapu Koko, and he tries to deal with it as early as possible. So something like a Shadow Ball, if that goes in. If the Marowak switching comes in, that could be great if he does have Xurkitree. As you mentioned, though, the Celesteela and the Gyarados...
Dane is calling the bluff.
He's really offering up the perfect setting. He's given him Electric Terrain. He's given him Gyarados and Celesteela. He wants to see that Xurkitree because of this Marowak.
Yeah, Dane is going to bring in the Marowak while Celesteela protects. May be dangerous if that Marowak is left open to an attack like this Shadow Ball from Porygon 2 on the switch-in. Justin catching the Marowak with that Shadow Ball, drops the special defense as well. Salamence with the Flamethrower also connects with the Marowak with that special defense drop. That's going to deal a little bit more than it would before. Put it in range for another Porygon 2 Shadow Ball. So this is looking a lot more like Game 1. Dane playing a little bit more reckless with that Marowak and taking free damage on the switch-in.
I was actually about to say, it feels so reminiscent of Game 1, where the Marowak comes in and takes a Shadow Ball to the face. There's no way around that. And a very smart play from Justin. I have to question Dane. Bringing in a Marowak when he knew about Shadow Ball may be a little bit risky, and if he's forced to protect or switch here, again, he's going to be punished by damage.
Yeah, have to be wondering what he was worried about with that Tapu Koko.
It getting knocked out?
Yeah, getting that Tapu Koko knocked out when Marowak seems like a higher priority Pokemon on his side.
It really is, I think.
Porygon 2 is going to Shadow Ball the Marowak slot again, but it is the Gyarados now. Getting another special defense drop. Salamence gets fully paralyzed this turn, so will not be able to make an attack here. Celesteela will connect with a Heavy Slam onto the Salamence, though, to pick up a lot of damage, but Salamence just barely hanging on there. So Celesteela, with that leftovers healing back up, did some good damage back to that Salamence, and Gyarados is now in the switch-in.
Well, Salamence is a very interesting conundrum here. Because it did get paralyzed that turn, took a lot of damage, but it stuck around, and that's important. We also saw it move, obviously, before the Celesteela. We knew about that. And with this special defense drop on Gyarados, I really don't think, outside of protecting, there's a particularly safe play for that slot.
Yeah. Well, it is going to be a Gigalith switch-in for the Porygon 2 on Justin's side. Wants to use these Trick Room turns while he still has them. Dane has to protect with the Gyarados now. After that special defense drop, while Salamence goes straight for a Dragon Pulse into that Protect. Celesteela continuing just to fire off these Heavy Slams, though, will finally pick up the KO onto Salamence.
Yeah, I really don't think losing the Salamence is the biggest deal there. You know, we've seen all four of Dane's Pokemon, and overall, they're not the real things that Salamence wants to deal with, particularly in this meta game. We are going to see Gigalith come in towards the end of a Trick Room, and now Porygon, with no Hariyama on the field, is in a good position to basically, if it needs to, set up Trick Room again.
Nah, Xurkitree alongside the Gigalith here.
Well,
that's the play.
Here's the interesting thing. While this turn of Trick Room is in play, Gigalith will be moving first. Now, we do know the Marowak has already taken a good amount of damage, and if Gigalith just covers either slot with a Rock Slide, that's going to be really, really nasty to see.
Yep, well, Celesteela is going to protect. So is the Gyarados. So Dane's just going for a double protector, trying to stall out the Trick Room. Gigalith just went for a Stone Edge, actually, while Xurkitree sets up a substitute to punish the double protect there. And this time, with Marowak being damaged heavily after that switch-in, that substitute has a lot more value than what it was in Game 2.
Yes, it's not facing off against a full health Marowak in this case, so he may be able to start wearing it down. This Gigalith, though, is probably needing Trick Room to do some work here. You have to look at the Pokemon on Dane's side of the field and say they both counter. Gigalith. I think Heavy Slam isn't going to be doing too much, but still significant damage. And something like a Waterfall out of Gyarados is going to be really troublesome for Gigalith here.
And Celesteela even got the defense boost off of that Beast boost, so not as afraid of Gigalith's Continental Crush.
Not at all, and Celesteela's going to have to be dealt with by this Xurkitree, and I don't think this is going to be the turn for it. What the Gigalith goes for here is so important.
Oh, it's nothing. The Gigalith goes for nothing. It switches out for Porygon 2 instead. Dane gets Marowak in for free. Xurkitree, though, does go for the Energy Ball just in case, so is going to be connecting with Gyarados. Like a lot of damage, actually, to the Gyarados, which is trying to Dragon Dance up, but because of the damage from that Energy Ball, we didn't see a lot of damage last time because it was all heavily resisted, but Xurkitree still has very high special attack. So a neutral Energy Ball dealing a lot of damage to the Gyarados. Does get a Dragon Dance off, but that is on a, I believe, 1-turn clock now with that Sandstorm. Yeah,
it's really low. You do have to wonder how important this Porygon 2 is going to be. And there's a very clear end game here, I think, for Justin, which relies on Trick Room going up.
Yeah.
Now, it is going to be a little bit harder to get Trick Room up with a Dragon Dance boost on Gyarados. We haven't seen an item on it yet. Nothing revealed, no berries activating at this point in the game. So potentially one of those Z moves. Of course, with the Dragon Dance boost, they become so much more powerful, but he does have to respect the Xurkitree. He can't leave it alone. He may, of course, just get caught by another Energy Ball. Marowak can only do so much, and without something like a Boomerang, we haven't seen much out of this Marowak. If it doesn't have that, Xurkitree could be sticking around to just start dealing damage. Porygon, though, could be setting up, and here is one of the Z moves.
It's going to be the Supersonic Sky Strike coming out
one
from
of those
the Gyarados.
rare ones. Yes, based off the move Bounce.
Bouncy.
Going right up into the sky after the boost from Dragon Dance. This is going to be doing a lot of damage, and with the substitute in play, it's got to be going towards that Porygon 2.
Still has its Eviolite this time,
It's a bulky Pokemon, but is it bulky enough?
It is enough. It is bulky enough. Hangs on 45 hit points. Xurkitree able to fire off an Energy Ball onto Gyarados, pick up that KO. And Justin, with that Porygon 2, should be able to get the Shadow Ball off onto Marowak. Xurkitree's Beast Boost, giving it a special attack boost as well. Marowak actually going first before the Porygon 2, connecting with the Porygon 2. Should be able to pick up this KO there, but dealing some damage back to itself and the sand damage and the boost. Energy Ball can pick up that Marowak now.
It really could. And taking this residual damage from all these things is going to be a bit of a trouble for this Marowak. Celesteela isn't going to have its boosts. Tapu Koko, of course, is one of the best options here. But I think the Gigalith may be able to eke it out without the help of the Trick Room here. As long as Marowak can be dealt with, as you said, with an Energy Ball, I think that there is a very good option for Justin. Dane, though, is going to have to get this Celesteela in. He's going to have to bring this game nice and slow. It's going to be tough, though. With the substitute in play, he only has one option to Leech Seed until he knocks out the substitute on this Xurkitree. That's something he's going to have to be worried about. Marowak probably can't do it because it might get knocked out by Energy Ball beforehand.
Marowak has to protect or switch out or anything else.
It has to keep itself safe. It's Tapu Koko coming in, so he's putting all the Celesteela pressure towards the end, maybe trying to leave it in a 1v1, knock out this substitute with the Tapu Koko, for example. I still like his position, though. With no defense boost on Celesteela, Gigalith hasn't used Continental Crush this game, so Xurkitree could maybe focus on the Marowak, or at least that slot. Gigalith can then focus on the Tapu Koko, and then you're left in a 2v1 with Xurkitree. There's a lot of options, and the onus is on Dane to protect the right Pokemon.
Absolutely. Dane is opting to protect the Marowak for the Celesteela. Marowak out, Celesteela in, switching in front of a Xurkitree. But it's not actually in front of a Xurkitree, as Tapu Koko shows the Volt Switch, will switch back, return to Dane, and will be able to switch in the Marowak again, but on the other side.
It's a rotating door of Pokemon.
I was going to go with Benny Hill.
That's also a good one. Get your little saxophones out. The Xurkitree doesn't fall for it, though. The Xurkitree going for the Energy Ball.
But into the Celesteela.
Not a big deal, depending on what this Gigalith has gone for.
It's the Continental Crush.
It's probably heading towards that Marowak. You might call it overkill, but getting rid of it is so important, especially because you're getting rid of it while Substitute is still in play for this Xurkitree.
All right, well, the Continental Crush from the Gigalith coming out. Is onto the Marowak, going to just squish it.
No more Lightning Rod. Marowak with Overkill has been removed from play.
Cry every time.
Sad reaction. We do. I think this is a great position for Justin, though. And with the switching, not protecting, yes, he kept things safe, but not safe enough.
Yeah. Dane has the Tapu Koko still in the back up against this circuitry, and Gigalith, really tough position here. Tapu Koko does dish out a lot of damage, but since that substitute is up, Circuitry is just going to be able to run over this team.
Yes, and I think, honestly, Justin needs to focus on Tapu Koko. Celesteela probably in a position where it feels forced to protect, and if Justin makes that correct prediction, throws everything towards Tapu Koko, it's going to be interesting. Probably doesn't want to do it this turn.
Tapu Koko is protecting itself this turn. Gigalith also protecting, so just Circuitry attacking this turn. Circuitry does go for the Thunderbolt into the protect. Celesteela able to get the Flamethrower off onto the Circuitry, will break the substitute.
That's a really big protect on Tapu Koko.
Absolutely.
A very smart play from Dane to call that he was going to predict a protect on Celesteela and go for it. If he'd have just Thunderbolt with Celesteela in Electric Terrain, we could be facing a different game. And you have to wonder, there's one question that's important here. Can Tapu Koko knock out Circuitry comfortably from this range?
Life Orb in terrain.
But if it does that, will Gigalith be able to fight back? That's so, so important.
Gigalith has lost its Continental Crush. I don't think it can take on a Celesteela one-on-one. Has the Curse to potentially boost up, but it's going to be really close.
But the Curse isn't going to help it defensively. It's only going to help it offensively. That turn from Dane, really a 50-50 on where the protect came down to. Justin falling on the wrong side of it.
Gleam.
Ooh.
Just a dazzling gleam coming out from the Tapu Koko. Not enough to pick up the KO.
Losing health.
Both the Pokemon loses health from that Life Orb onto the Celesteela. Celesteela is KO'd. A critical hit coming out from the Circuitry.
It's all on Gigalith.
Needs to hit this attack.
It needs to hit it, and it needs to do big damage. Stone Edge
connects.
is connecting.
Justin has received your energy, knocked out the Tapu Koko with that Stone Edge, and Justin Carris popping off, made it to day 2.
Look at that man. He is so excited to advance to day 2.
Yeah.
He is looking drained. He is looking, I think there's some happiness and joy in
I don't
there.
know if he's happy or if he's just like, I'm so over this.
That dazzling gleam from Dane, probably thinking an easy double knockout, let's go. It
Not quite enough.
Doesn't get it. That is an insane finish. It looked almost lost for Justin when he attacked into that protect.
Yeah.
But then the dazzling gleam gave him another opportunity. And in that turn as well, he called no protect on Celesteela perfectly, using the terrain to knock it out with Circuitry.
Yep, absolutely. And what a really interesting 3-game set there.
That was so, so exciting. The Shadow Ball on Porygon, something nearly nobody has considered. Clearly Justin respecting Marowak.
Well, if you're running a Circuitry team, like we saw in Game 2, you have to be able to deal with Marowak. You have to make those choices that seem suboptimal on literally any other team, because you just can't win if Marowak gets to just wall your Circuitry.
And in Dane's shoes, you have to wonder about that turn towards the end where he did the revolving door. Basically, it comes to the point where he needed Marowak. So he got it out, and I thought, fantastic, he's got it out of play. And then he threw it back into the fray immediately. And from there, really struggled to, keep up. Yes, the Tapu Koko could have done more damage, I think, if it had gone for something other than Dazzling Gleam at the end.
Yeah.
But he had to go for something, and if he thought that was going to be the play, maybe Dazzling Gleam would knock out Circuitry, do good damage to Gigalith, so Heavy Slam would get it. Falling short was not what he wanted, though.
If you're Dane, I have to wonder if you're going back home and doing some of those calcs with the Life Orb, with the terrain. Maybe the Thunderbolt would pick up a little bit of extra damage.
I really don't think you want to go over it with a fine-tooth comb. At a time like this, especially, you probably just want to let a sleeping dog lie.
Yeah. But unfortunately for Dane, he is not going to be able to advance to day 2. That spot is reserved for Justin Carris, who phenomenal play in that 3-game set.